first and foremost, as the RC, we needed to understand what we thought the house values were, right? The common consensus is that we wanted to do something different and to create a level of excellence that had like never before been done on campus, right? But the most important part of that journey was to build the idea of what that person or that excellence looks like with the first generation, right? So what we did is that we built the values with our first years, right? The understanding of, okay, what is a Legionnaire was the first exercise we did with the guys walking in, and we created like 7 steps or 7 core values that we have all agreed to be and live throughout this time, and those in a way exemplified like levels of excellence and gentlemanness and a lot of different things. But I'd say that the reason why we were able to keep it instilled within the generation is because they weren't outside of the process. We built that process with them. The structure would have been there in terms of, all right, this is the hierarchy of your house. This is how we're going to move forward. But the personality of the house was literal decisions that we all made together, and then we carried those across.
It really depends who you ask, because a lot of people had different interests in the formation of Legatum from what I can recall. Personally, at the time it was founded, there was a lot of variety in terms of the residences, and it was very, to put it bluntly, it was very black and white. And we thought from an SRC perspective that we could force integration, or we could like try a little experiment and start something new that sort of threw a spanner in the works. So we decided, okay, we'll found a new residence with sort of like-minded people, and then got a whole bunch of I'd say my friends, but like the debating fraternity together, and we decided, well, let's start a residence and try and, not push a message of integration, but just be like, take all of the rejects from the fringes, put them together and show that they can do awesome things, which is what ended up happening, well, to my mind.
To be honest with you, it was very different. I was from a high school that was predominantly black. That had become predominantly black, and then having gone into the Legatum space, there were a lot of Janes who were from different high schools in Bloem, outside of Bloem, with different races, different cultures, different religions as well. So it was just, I wouldn't say it was a culture shock, but it was refreshing. It was a good time, it was a good experience, yeah.
It was quite an honor to know that, coming after what you would call the super team, to be given the responsibility to take over from them and keep the race ticking, was a great honor given to me by many of the members of the house. I think I stood unopposed, and that gave me great confidence in what the gentlemen of the house believed I could give to the house.
We mostly just wanted a name that had gravitas, and then when we sort of thought gravitas, okay, cool, Latin. And just had some sort of like meaning that a lot of different people could attach to in different ways. Legatum seemed apt because it was a legacy, it was a Latin name, and a lot of us were in law at the time, so it just sounded like cool to us. It wasn't necessarily something that we absolutely went for, but we needed a name, and I think it was the name we disliked the least. Well, at least from my perspective. I think at the time I was like to the guys, what name do we want? It came up and I just didn't fight it.
Okay, let me just add an asterisk to that. Prime 1.5, right? I'd say 1.5 because initially, our team was relatively one person bigger, and a man called Leonard Carlitz, he was also the prime offices before he joined our team. We had decided that he's going to be prime and I was going to be vice prime. But for a while, Leonard would go back and forth with me and be like, yo man, I'm not sure, I might also leave, I think you should do it. And before the year even started, I was then the prime of Legatum.
I was a member of that previous res for, I wouldn't say a long period, probably 6 months. Went to one of their elections, sat there, saw how they interacted, saw that it was sort of people that had all come out of high school together, knew each other, and had decided that they would continue this thing after high school. And I'd come from Johannesburg, didn't know a lot of people in Bloemfontein besides, my debate friends. And the true reason why I decided to join Legatum is we had come back, myself, Trey, Zola, Sbu, from a trip in Zimbabwe, a debate tournament in Zimbabwe, and they informed me there that they were starting this new race. And I came back early, and I sat with a lot of the Legionnaires at the time, Legionnaire ones at the time, and the decision was on my birthday, actually, 19th of January. I went to the house, just to go sit with my friends, and they celebrated my birthday more than my previous race even sent me a message. And I realized that this was the brotherhood that I wanted to join, and I would force my way in whichever way possible, to be a member of the house.
I didn't have to adapt to anything because it was a platform, or rather, Legatum was a platform for us to create our own movement. One thing that happens every year, still a tradition that happens now, is that when the Legionnaires come, as part of our orientation, we have a ceremony whereby they list 10 values that they will be held accountable for throughout their period as first years, right? And for us, we had, like gentlemanness and all of that stuff, and from those it wasn't much of a paradigm shift, but it was more of a challenge for me to evolve, So it wasn't an adaptation. An adaptation was growth.
My personal opinion of that, we just need to also understand context, right? Things like the handshake, things like various things were, I guess, created so that a Legatum person had their own identity. You understand? And it was very intentional in the fact that, let's create brotherhood. Right? So never above you, never beside you. Never above you, never below you, always beside you. That comes from drinking, but at the same time, that metaphor is really deep. And to instill that in things was important. The handshake was again, trying to figure out ways that we can be original. I don't know if you guys still do it now, but at the formal we gave out bow ties with an L on it. That was something we wanted to also carry on to distinguish the boys of Legatum. So I don't know, maybe it was needed at that time. If you guys still do it now, that's really dope. But I just think at the time we needed to really, really find our own identity within the muck and show people that we had our own identity, because everyone else had their identity through time. We needed to create our own identity through more tangible things and develop that thing a lot more quickly. So I think those came about and I enjoy it. I know it's still awkward with some people. I meet them on the street, they don't know whether to give me the handshake or give me a normal handshake. It's whatever. It's just the understanding of that. Again,
I think it was just us being pompous at the time. You'll have to ask the marketing team. It just seemed cool. We had this new platform of things that we could do, and it was a whole lot of us that were expressing our own sort of creativity and ways to drive what we wanted to see change on campus. You have to remember this was a time on campus where we just come out of a whole lot of racial incidents. There was a lot of sort of racial issues and tension within the residences itself, and we had this sort of blank canvas where we could do anything with and experiment and see. And the whole principle was to try and be a sort of proof of concept that instead of forcing people to do something, in this case integrate, rather offer a separate platform where people who do want to integrate can integrate. Rather offer a platform where people who do want to integrate can integrate, and then the people on the outside can see, wait, this actually works better.
Getting into the house, being welcomed in the house, being given a space where I was appreciated for being myself, for what I could bring to the house, and just a general brotherhood that I felt in the house. Not a day.
Personally, I wanted to have a space where people who weren't invested in the university, from a student perspective, could come. Because at the time, it was like, okay, you had Kagisho, which had its own limitations and exclusivities, and you had Veritas, which had a number of its own sort of exclusivities. So a lot of the people didn't have like a home. And I call those people like the rejects very fondly, because it's not to say that they're bad people or rejected from societies. They were rejected from the existing establishment. And the second thing which came over time was that you had all these kids who obviously didn't have a home within the established culture of the university, and then now to sort of bring them into the fold and show the culture, as it were, which is like this sort of metaphysical thing, that all the stuff that you've been rejecting is actually useful to the development of this institution. So let's build a space for it and let it thrive. And I think that's what, if you go on and you speak to all the various leaders throughout the house, that's what sort of influenced all the sort of fringy cool things that Legatum would end up doing. I've got a couple of projects that maybe I'll mention later that I think of pretty fondly. Yeah.
This, on a personal level, I thought the propaganda of excellence is the best way, right? And that's the number one thing. We wanted to bring across this idea that, look, you can start your journey to the excellent you or the excellent us with us, right? It doesn't matter who you are and where you're from. We can, if you have that idea and if you want those things, you can join us and we can do it. Doesn't matter where you're from, let's just go get it, right?
To be honest, I was finessed, but it was a very beautiful finesse because it came with value. Got there first year, my intention was to join this other race, right? Another day race, where everybody I'd gone to school with or I'd been dancing with from high school into. And then this one gen came, Mr. Digger, you know. He came through, he was the prime at the time, came through. I mean, you told me what it was about. And my one question was, what is your race going to offer me that the next race is not? The race is not. And then he was very honest about it. He was like, listen, dude, we are starting out. You know, other races have had, you know, their accomplishments, their accolades, and all of that. But the one thing we can offer you is a platform for you to be part of something that is going to be something going forward. And yeah, he just got my heart from there.
You see, the business of selling things to first years and the business of selling things to other students is, what can you prove? You know, Veritas tells you they've won endless sales, they've been around and they've done all of these things. You tell us you're just new. So it's like, what was our sales proposition? Why would we join you? You know, and I think that was one. But the rest, man, I think we were more excited. I mean, it wasn't really a burden. I mean, everyone expected us to fail, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're like, okay, this is something we want to try. So I think the biggest thing is, how do we sell it to everyone else? How do we give them this picture that we have and buy it? Yeah.
Everyone would have different challenges because everyone had different insights and desires of what they wanted to do within the sort of blank canvas that I spoke about. But for me, there were two primary challenges. The one was not to come across as sexist, because I didn't want the female race, but it seemed like there was a lot of, well, at least not immediately, there was a lot of tension saying, well, you can't start a male race if you can't start a female race. And I was like, well, there's already one extra female race, and we're trying to prove a concept. So if it works, then we can do the female race later. But you have to pick your battles, and so we did the Arista as well. And that was difficult to navigate because it kind of doubled up on the work. And I didn't have that many female sort of friends in leadership that as close to me as I did males to sort of build it the way we built Legatum. And then the other one was premises, because we started this thing and we had no idea where it was going to go. And eventually we just sort of like went to an old canteen and divvied it up, and that became Legatum from what I can recall. And then it was a matter of what are we going to do? in terms of the house. What are the policies? What are the ways of going about things? What's the culture going to be like? I regret it now, but in the time in my head, it was like, this is going to be sort of an elitist house. And I had a long chat with Trey, I can recall, about how that would materialize, and he changed my mind on that, which I'm eternally grateful for. But just those sort of conversations were difficult to have, because everyone wanted to do something with this, and how you would meet in the middle to make what you want to happen was a tough establishment thing. But because we were all sort of not like-minded, but we all had similar visions, it was easy to reconcile it at the end.
To be honest with you, it wasn't a matter of wanting to be a leader. It was a matter of going back to Legatum and being a part of Legatum in as much of a substantial way as I could be. I was there for 1 year, my very first year, 2012. I was there for 1 year. After that, I had to leave. Came back a few years later. This was in 2017, second semester. Got back to the house. The love was still there. Different faces, many different places. The culture had changed a bit, but it was still a place I could fit into. So now when you leave and come back and still find that welcoming, well, for me, that is, I still wanted to be a part of that. I still wanted to contribute. So, I did all those. I ran again for those 2 years because I wanted to make a substantial contribution. And after I was prime, I still wanted to be a mentor because I wanted to contribute. That did not work out, but I still found other ways in which I could contribute towards the race. So, yeah.
So, RC Sports at the time, remembering that we were a small group of guys, we had some excellent soccer players. Guys that were well known even in Bloemfontein for being actually marvelous at soccer. And then you would find guys that came from the Eastern Cape, KZN, journeymen, who no one knew about. Then we came together and we started a very competitive soccer team. We started a volleyball team. Badminton, so those are sort of the sports that we started with. Of course, athletics, we had some athletes there that joined us from the first year group, but we really took over soccer and we really ran with it.
I don't think I can point to any one thing, but I enjoy competition, and I thrive on that. And it's not about winning; it's how you compete. Right. So in Legatum's first year, we didn't necessarily have the numbers, but the way we competed was different. Right. It was enough to have residents that have been around and doing this for years, competing against us. Why? You understand? So something as simple as we're going to go to first year's athletics. We have the smallest group here, but we're going to be the loudest. We're going to run. We're going to do this until you can't anymore. You understand? That kind of fight, that kind of effort. Every single time Legatum gentlemen put that out, that was a proud moment for me as a prime of Legatum. But yeah, that's in the time of being.
However cliche and cheesy it may be, Legatum was home. Legatum was home. I could it was so much of a home that I spent more time there than at home. And yeah, it's just unfortunate now because of the pandemic and the regulations that we can't be there much, and also other commitments. But that's essentially what it is. It's a brotherhood.
I've got my colleagues here. I don't know if they remember the story, but we were in trouble. So the university works in long forms of staging, and you have to put a proposal down, and then it has to go through various committees and this is a strategy that universities historically have applied across the world, where you've got student leadership structures that only last 1 year. So there's very little you can do in that year, especially when you factor in the times of holidays and exams and so on. So it would be impossible to start a new residence, but going through the policy. So what we did was, at the time, the university student affairs department had this F1 program, and that program was to send students abroad. And of course, all the senior staff at the time were like, yeah, we're going with. So we took that opportunity, and then while most of the senior staff were away, I think it was the Volksblad, or a whole bunch of media institutions got a press release that the university was starting two new residences actually. We did a male and a female one, barista. And then once that was published, it just had to follow through.
I don't know. Like, it's been 10 years, guys. Like, I think like the last leader I know of the house, which is bad as chills. You know what I mean? And like, I'm proud of every single generation we've had. Like, I think, you know what? I'm glad that you guys have a bigger appetite to win. All right. My first appetite was to survive and win, right? So first, compete against the naysayers and make sure we are there next year. Because like, people were saying we wouldn't make it past the second year, wouldn't make it past the third year. Every time we kept making it past those were wins for me. And now that a person can go to the University of the Free State and get a degree and never think Legatum was never part of the system, that's crazy. And the fact that like now Legatum's personal interests are about, we compete, you know, that's dope, and that should just keep getting better and better and better. And if that can get to a point of where it not only creates like better people, but like it's good for society, like Legatum impacts society too, great, let's go. Yeah.
Legatum is the only L that's a W. That's what I learned. But on a serious note, I think challenging myself. I mean, I know when I got to varsity, my aim was just to get this degree and be out, which later on turned to listen, get to know people. You know, it's very great to have great marks. You know what I mean? But you know, when you focus so much on one thing, you neglect so many other things that could develop you or augment who you are when you step out into the world of work or whatever it is you want to do after varsity. So yeah, there was that growth, challenging myself, and also being a people's person. I think also as far as leadership is concerned, in my personal capacity, just being able to lead myself with discipline, although there were some rock star moments here and there. But that's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it.
You know, it's sad to say, but I frankly don't care. The alumni investment for me was a 3-year return. I wanted to prove the concept, I wanted to see what would happen, and I wanted to sort of have this sort of thing. And then after it was done and I had achieved what I wanted from the house, it was like, okay, but it's still, in my mind, this blank canvas that people can change and do with what they will. And as long as that stays the platform or what the house is, then I'm pretty happy. So like, the Legatum as it is now is not the Legatum as I had left it. And that's super cool for me, because it means that it's still an expressive place where people aren't just chained to some sort of ideology, but they're using it for what they see as the forward momentum of the house. And that's pretty special to me, because the whole thing that we were trying to disinvest on was the whole sort of entrenched culture that is exclusive to all the people that it should be servicing.
You know, the house's growth it's dope. I mean, it's awesome. And I think it's dope because I have nothing to do with it except for the contribution that I made when I did, you know, and that tells me that, okay, look, there's something that is like sustainable and living there, you know, that continues to replenish itself every year and continues to grow. The fact that I can encounter like the house without having to look for it, be it on social media, be it like with conversations with people, and still bump into like regular, like, how do I put it, regular graduates or regular alumni of the house, that to me is amazing. I mean, going to a club, I wasn't even prime when some of these guys were in the house, but they still see me and they're like, yo man, how you doing? You know, and it's gotten to the point where I don't know these people, and that's really cool, man. And I think in of itself, I'd like maybe for that to be a little bit more formal. I would like to know them, But I feel that, man, that's crazy. And I think it's living up to the name. I mean, legacy. It's creating its own legacy. You know what I mean? And every year it goes on, the legacy continues. It's 10 years now, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Let's go.
There has been change from the time it started till now. As far as the demographics, there's change in terms of race as well. It's more skewed towards people of color. It's not a bad thing. I mean, ultimately, Legatum is a space that is meant to change as time goes by, right? We're fluid in that sense. We're trying to be fluid. The aim is to be fluid in that sense. And as far as it being changed in a good or bad way, good. It's a space where also gens are encouraged or taught about being welcoming of people of different communities. One being the LGBTQIA plus. Pardon me if I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, it's a safe space for many different kind of people, and it continues to try to be that kind of space. So it's a great space, yeah.
I think the res still does what it set out to do, even though my plan was only for 3 years, and now 10 years down the line, it's still like the sort of space where a small number of guys can gather and, well, hopefully in future more and more, but a small number of guys can gather and do what they couldn't do anywhere else. So it's this, like I said, blank canvas that people can express themselves on in the university environment, where otherwise their talents would have gone lost in the ether.
I want to say revolutionary. It really does sound, like we're being very idealistic here, but it really was. I think I came to varsity thinking that I would come study, finish my studies and leave. Make friends, obviously, enjoy the experience and leave. But being thrusted in a brotherhood like Legatum, to some degree also taught me to take responsibility. Some things are bigger than you, and sometimes you are called. I feel like my time at the res was a calling to come and serve, and a calling to come and meet a new brotherhood that I then became part of. So there's a lot of ways I can describe my experiences at the L, but I think I'm very satisfied, and I don't look back and think about where I could have been, what could have happened. My time was very fulfilling. I met some gentlemen that I've gone on to form lifelong friendships with. And just understanding, I think it also thrust me into the space of the varsity, understanding how the varsity works, and to some degree also helping me know how the varsity processes work, and people at the varsity actually recognizing who you are. I think through my time at the L, some officials, if I can call them that, at the varsity, even now remember me from that year. So it really thrust me into responsibility, and it thrust me into a position where I needed to take up more stuff and make great friends, make great friends and brothers.
My proudest moment as Prime of Legatum. Honestly, this it was an internal factor. This my proudest moment was when, okay, let me just backtrack a bit. So 2018, there was like an influx, right, of gens from the Eastern Cape, Xhosa men, like Xhosa gens. I labeled them the X-Men, and obviously the rest was the same thing. So there was still that bit of division between them, because Mkhaya type of thing, you know what I mean. And then there was everybody else who'd been there. And at the end of my term, this was as Prime, so 2 years later, I was very happy to have seen that there had been more integration, more, interaction amongst people of different tribes. And that was my happiest moment, or my happiest realization at the end of my term.
There's a lot of words that come to mind. But if I were to pick one, it's probably one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. Just because, like, you know, I was 22 at the time, and I thought, let's try this out. And you think, oh, you know, whenever you start a new project, you think, okay, let's think 6 months down, and it will probably be a flop. So then when after a year it was great, and then we had RC elections again, and then it was great, and then it just kept going. When I left university, it was still there. And it did all the things that we had set out to do. It was like, wow, like we changed something. And even if it didn't change the university as much as would have been ideal, it changed the university experience for a lot of the kids that went through it. And I think you get 40, 50, 60 first years a year. So it's not that big of a group. But where would they have gone, and what would they have done? They would have been lost to, you know, doing nothing. And the stuff that they've done, like I said, the one project that sticks to my mind was having a beauty pageant that was judged by blind people. And I thought, like, that's not something that they would have done in the existing culture, but they did it out of something that we started, and that's awesome for me. So yeah, it's very satisfying for me to see, like, these are the cool things that the house has done. It's a sort of brotherhood where people who would otherwise not fall in would be able to fall in and use that space to do awesome stuff. That's fantastic.
Personally, it's the idea that you can build something with people with a common vision, and it can carry on past you. And I think that's important. Personally, I can't say enough. Like, I'm really proud of the fact that the residence has continued, and it's continued to grow and become its own entity. You know what I mean? And I think obviously we can get stronger in a lot of different ways. You know, be it in the alumni, be it wherever. But I love the fact that it keeps growing and becomes more dynamic all the time. And like, kudos to the next generation, the generation now. Yeah, definitely.
So, in the final months of my term as RC Sports, I went to the athletics, and we had one of the coolest vests as an RC. And I remember at the time, I met Wade van Niekerk at the athletics meeting. And he walked up to me and he said, listen, I see what you guys are doing. But bigger than that, I think I just like how cool that vest is. And he said to me, if you can get me a running vest in the same colors as you have on, I will run for Legatum. And true to his word, we got Wade van Niekerk a vest, and little did we know that vest would bring Gideon, who was also an SA champ, and bring Thuso Mpaung, who was also an SA champ, and they all ran for Legatum. And I believe the year after mine, Legatum actually won the athletics, with all of those guys running for Legatum. And although Wade says it's how cool the vest was, I think it was more of what he saw we did as a house, and the values that we had and the brotherhood that we had. And I would say that that was one of my crowning moments as an RC, to be able to gift, I would say, the RC that succeeded me, that caliber of athlete to run for the house. And maybe we had something to do with his world record.
You should.
You're not on a party bus.
Why would we have a party bus?
Because we had a party bus.
Yeah.
I wasn't even involved when the party bus came.
Yeah.
That was the year after.
That was Tofa's. That was Tofa's idea.
That's what happens when you
Was just a random...
Nah, man.
So why didn't you have a party bus?
We need to talk to management.
It was for open day. We had a party bus.
Yeah. And went around campus, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Tofa's
that's crazy.
Tofa's. Guys, we're following superstars. We had to do something that was cool.
Yeah,
Top
I
was-
don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. We inspired.
The best is when we went into the streets
Yeah.
afterwards and come past the
Yeah.
car.
So that's like,
You should have picked me up. Like, be rolling.
I'm surprised. Didn't you go to Joburg after that?
No.
Just didn't
No,
Joburg.
no. But hey, okay. All right.
Did you guys carry on the Wednesdays?
Yeah, well, they're not as wild as back then, but they cute.
Is there a fans meeting?
Yeah, there was a fans meeting yesterday, last night, I think.
Sure. Who chairs these things?
Yeah.
Who has been given such capacity
It's different. Last
and
time,
great responsibility?
it's hectic. Last time I was SK. It's okay. Yeah, but that was the last time I was at. But yeah, that's the one thing that's consistent.
Oh yes.
No,
I
no,
forgot
no.
about finance meetings, but I think for good reason.
Yeah.
The first one wasn't good, right?
Yeah, it was him, man.
Is that a paintball place?
Under
Yeah.
the table, yeah. That was actually, it was
I don't know if it was wise to give us paintball guns and a finance meeting.
But you know what? Dude? You know, I was thinking about what Noah was saying about the soccer. Soccer was a social event, though. Like we used to actually like go to soccer to like chill and to like drinks, and that was like our thing. Like I think we supported soccer like a social thing, and I think people were also surprised that these guys can actually like, do this shit. It's crazy.
But obviously, it's new rares. No one thinks that. Obviously, some guys from Bloom know. Okay,
Yeah.
they've got these guys and that
Yeah.
guy and that guy, and then the next thing you just see a whole team formed, and you just see us winning, and then you're just like, "Just what happened here? But who are these guys?" I remember Tutuka used to speak a lot of crap,
Yeah.
and then we whipped that ass real quick.
You know, and a moment that stands out to me, I think there was a Prima Veritas. He was making a speech to first years, and he was just like, "Yeah, we've been around for like 90 years. We've then we won this, then we won this, then we won that." And then I was chilling, thinking to myself, "Why does it take you guys so long to be a champion?" It's like, well, you only need 1 year. Like you can't give me all this history and be like, okay, yes, and then we won this. Like, that took a really long time. That's crazy. But yeah, I guess it's the funniest things. Yeah.
But that 2 year was a real thing, eh?
What?
They'll be dead in 2 years.
Ooh, we used to throw a big tennis ball against the wall in the res and made up that game wall ball. Does that tennis ball still exist?
Zero. A lot of stuff from back then don't exist anymore. The pool is gone.
The swimming pool or the
yeah.
pool table?
The pool, the swimming pool.
The portable pool that you guys threw me in.
Wait, hold on. What about the jacuzzi, the chandelier? Like, where's all of that, man? You know, a
sleeper couch?
We
We're
so
the
hard.
sleeper couch. We worked so
so
hard to
there.
get that money from Dubai.
You know, like, where's all of that?
I can't account for everything, Joe, but you need to understand there was a time when I was away, and
Yeah.
in my absence, you know, whatever happened.
The sound system?
There's a sound system.
Is it still that colourful one that lights up?
That lights up, yes.
Shout out. Those are the ones that last.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that last.
Oh, what had happened was, if I remember well, someone opened the shit, the speakers, took those things out, the actual speakers out, and they just left the cover there.
What?
Yo. No, you
In the head.
I got this better than a lot realer than it was in my day.
I remember.
And they hit us up
I
hectic.
remember Rick in our year when we had to speak with the first years, because all the first years go into the one hall, and then you speak to all the first years. And I remember a storm
The
was
storm was coming.
And Rick said they thought we wouldn't survive, but look outside. A storm is coming. yo. And they were shook. They were shook. That was good. That was good time. But yeah, man.
What's the one thing that you guys miss about that time of Legatum? Like if you could relive a particular, doesn't necessarily have to be Legatum related, but what is it for you guys that you would relive?
I think like being on campus at the time like could get really boring, especially if you had like deferred classes.
Yeah.
And then to be able to go to Legatum, and there would always be someone there. I know that's cliche, but this part isn't. Who'd be willing to skip that class with you and then go for a drink. And then you went to Tromare at 10, saying, "I'll get to my class at 2." But then you don't, and then you spend that whole time wishing that there was a bathroom nearer to Tromare.
True. That still happens.
Well, it's not called Tromare.
Well, it's the module.
Yeah.
Is it called
The module. That's why you fail it. Why would they call it the module?
You need to call it the module.
Yeah, it's the module now.
Nah. But you know what? Real talk. I think ever since the beginning of Legatum, I don't think I spent many weekends without Legatum homies. And it was never necessarily a structured arrangement. I mean, like from yo man, let's go watch something at Ronald's place, or swim, or catch up like that. You know, let's play indoor soccer. I mean, more wholesome moments. As much as we drank, which was like and chilled and parked, had great times. But I think there was like alternative social things and outlets.
And it was organic.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, we must go and now support this. I was like, let's go. Yeah.
It was more people who wanted to be there. And and you talk about the house there too, you know, talk about relationships, dynamics, because it's people at the end of the day, you know what I mean? So it was always tough, you know, there's always the relationships, you know, between people are always up and down.
Yeah, I get you. And I think that still happens now. Well, I've had the same experiences, and I realized that a lot of these organic relationships result in those people being the ones that stay at Legatum longer. Because, you know, you find those people who come, they be there at night, check the vibes, but don't really stay long. But the ones, the relations rather that are not formed in Legatum or for Legatum at that particular point in time, they're the ones that last longer, and as a result, people get to stay at Legatum. That's one thing I've come to appreciate.
But also because of the nature of Legatum.
True.
Where it's a day rest, you can't force participation.
Yeah.
You can't force someone to. If someone says, I don't want to come to a house meeting, they don't want to come to a house meeting, they won't come. But you know that once guys buy into it, then it's organic. Then they do it because they want to be there. Like, you know, we sat there a couple of nights. There's many stories. I hope you burnt the sleeper couch. But it was all organic.
Casting couch.
Yeah.
But that organic, okay, I was like, hello. Yeah?
We called it the casting couch. And it's like, I still haven't been casting.
Same here.
Okay, I think I lost my train of thought there.
But on that, what was really cool for me is the way that Legatum, and I think this came from the way we used to operate out of the debating circles, is that we would mix business and pleasure. So it would be like a meeting, but it would be unstructured, informal. We knew what needed to get did, and it got did. But after that, we knew we'd be having a fun time, especially on a Wednesday. I really want to explain to him how Wednesday things happened.
Okay, yeah.
Put it on.
There's a formal side to it, and it's just that, like, firstly, on its baseline, on campus, every Wednesday is a rest day, right? And we couldn't be swallowed up by like all this competition and not actively compete. But then again, at night, man, like, why are they taking their stuff off? We gotta continue, you know, to show that it's Legatum Wednesday, the whole day. Not just in the afternoon, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's my explanation. Yeah, I don't know what's your
It's to sell 30 Rand buckets at Barbas.
Yeah.
To see, you know, Shem, you mentioned Miss Legatum, and it's good to see them doing other stuff. I see they have now curated discussions on, you know, so not just that the res is. We did some really cool fun stuff, and we really did some cool, impactful societal stuff.
But for the time as well. Yeah. So it's not like they're carrying on doing Miss Legatum because the previous generation did it. That's what's cool, is like new stuff, innovation.
That's dope.
And they're more social media than we were.
Yeah, but we didn't really have that social media. Like what was Instagram in 2012? You know, like you know. But it was more. We
wrote on each other's walls.
Yeah, it was more about pushing the envelope, and I think that like it's continued to do that, and I think if it continues to do that, that's fine. Yeah, I think we're done.
I'm still gonna put this on camera. We need a 10-year anniversary trip. Shem said that Rhodes is in the Eastern Cape.
Wait for Nikat will take us.
Yeah, but the real reason we started Legatum is to stop the Illuminati. This is day one.